She laughed at the judge's face, and in that single moment of arrogance, she signed her own destruction. If you're ready to see justice served, hit that like button right now. The courtroom was silent in that suffocating way that precedes a storm. The kind of silence where every breath sounds like an intrusion, where the creak of wood beneath shifting weight echoes like thunder. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany benches, painting everything in amber and grey. The air was thick, not with heat, but with tension, with the weight of consequence hanging over everyone present like an invisible guillotine. Judge Elias Monroe sat elevated behind the bench, a monument of calm authority. At 63, his face bore the lines of 1,000 verdicts, 1,000 confrontations with human nature at its worst, and occasionally its best. His hair, silver white and neatly combed back, caught the light. His eyes, sharp and unwavering behind reading glasses he didn't really need, surveyed the room with the patience of a man who had seen every trick, every manipulation, every desperate plea and arrogant boast the legal system could produce. He wore his black robes like armor, and when he was still, which was almost always, he resembled a statue commemorating justice itself. Before him stood Victoria Ashford, 26 years old. Blonde hair that cost more to maintain than most people earned in a month, swept back in an elegant chignon that screamed country club sophistication. Her suit was Chanel, navy blue with gold buttons that caught the light whenever she moved. Her makeup was flawless, applied by professionals who understood that courtroom appearances mattered. She wore confidence like perfume, saturating the air around her with it. Her posture was perfect, chin slightly elevated, shoulders back. Everything about her physical presence communicated one message: I don't belong here and you can't touch me. Her father, Marcus Ashford, sat in the gallery behind her. 72 years old, self-made billionaire, owner of Ashford Industries, a conglomerate that had fingers in real estate, tech, media, and pharmaceutical development. He sat with the stillness of a man accustomed to controlling rooms through pure presence. His suit probably cost more than the bailiff's annual salary. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked everything with the calculating awareness of someone who had spent decades turning situations to his advantage. Next to Victoria stood her attorney, Gerald Westbrook, senior partner at Morrison, Westbrook and Associates, arguably the most expensive defense firm on the eastern seaboard. Silver-tongued, shark-eyed, dressed in a suit so perfectly tailored, it looked like it had been sewn onto his body that morning. He'd made a career out of making problems disappear for people who could afford his retainer. The charges were vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. 6 months prior, Victoria had been driving her Mercedes-Benz SL Class through downtown at 11:30 on a Saturday night. Security footage showed her running a red light at an intersection, striking a 23-year-old graduate student named David Chen, who had been crossing legally. The impact had thrown David 30 feet. Victoria had slowed down briefly, the footage showed her brake lights illuminating, and then she'd accelerated away, leaving David bleeding on the asphalt. He died 40 minutes later at Regional Medical Center, surrounded by strangers, while his mother was still trying to get there. The evidence was overwhelming. Traffic cameras, security footage from 3 different angles, witnesses, toxicology reports showing Victoria's blood alcohol level at nearly twice the legal limit, even fragments of her car's paint left at the scene that matched her vehicle perfectly. The prosecution had built a case so airtight it should have been a formality. But this was not a normal proceeding. Judge Monroe looked down at the papers before him, though he'd already memorized every word. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the courtroom, despite being barely above conversational volume. It was a voice that commanded attention not through volume, but through weight, through the absolute certainty that every word mattered. Ms. Ashford, you stand accused of vehicular manslaughter and fleeing the scene of an accident that resulted in the death of David Chen. How do you plead? Victoria tilted her head slightly. as if the question itself was amusing to her. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, not nervous, not apologetic, but entertained. She glanced back at her father, who gave the slightest nod, then returned her gaze to Judge Monroe. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Her voice was clear, confident, almost melodious. There wasn't a tremor in it, not a hint of remorse or fear. Gerald Westbrook stepped forward smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may address the court, my client maintains her innocence in this matter. We believe the evidence has been misinterpreted and that there are significant procedural irregularities in how this case has been." "Mr. Westbrook," Judge Monroe interrupted, his tone unchanged but something sharpening in his gaze. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted, the procedural motions your firm has filed, all 17 of them, each one attempting to exclude evidence, dismiss witnesses, or delay these proceedings. We are here today because the evidence is substantial and because a young man is dead. You'll have opportunity to present your defense. But let's dispense with the preamble about irregularities unless you have something specific and substantive to present right now." Westbrook's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. "Of course, Your Honor. We simply wanted to establish for the record that—" "Established. Mr. Hernandez, you may present the prosecution's case." District Attorney Rafael Hernandez rose from his seat. 48 years old, career prosecutor, a man who had clawed his way up from a public defender's office in the Bronx to the district attorney's office through pure competence and an unshakable belief in equal justice. He'd handled everything from petty theft to organized crime, but this case had gotten under his skin in a way few others had. Maybe it was the casualness of the crime, the way someone could end a life and drive away as if nothing had happened. Maybe it was David Chen's mother, who had sat in his office and shown him photos of her son at graduation, at family dinners, pursuing dreams that would never be fulfilled. Maybe it was the way the Ashford family had tried to make this go away, with money and influence, as if justice was just another commodity to be purchased. "Thank you, Your Honor." Hernandez's voice was steady, professional. He moved to the center of the courtroom, where a large screen had been set up. "The prosecution would like to begin by presenting video evidence from the night of September 14th. The lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered to life. The courtroom watched in absolute silence as grainy security footage played. The timestamp in the corner read 11:28 p.m. The intersection was clearly visible, Main Street and Fifth Avenue, well-lit, clear weather. David Chen appeared from the right side of the frame, crossing in the marked crosswalk, while the pedestrian signal showed the white walking figure. He was looking at his phone, earbuds in, carrying a backpack. Then the Mercedes appeared from the left, moving fast. Too fast. No attempt to slow down. The impact happened in a fraction of a second, violent and devastating. David's body was thrown like a rag doll, tumbling through the air before hitting the ground and sliding several feet. The Mercedes's brake lights flared red. For 3 seconds, Hernandez had counted them obsessively, the car was stationary. Then it accelerated away, disappearing from the frame. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Someone in the gallery was crying softly. David's mother, probably. Judge Monroe's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes had fixed on Victoria Ashford, watching her reaction. Victoria looked mildly uncomfortable, but not devastated, not horrified. She shifted her weight slightly and glanced at her manicured nails. Hernandez let the silence hang for a moment before continuing. Traffic cameras tracked the vehicle to an underground parking garage registered to Ashford Tower. The defendant's vehicle was found there 3 hours later, damaged to the front bumper and hood, consistent with striking a pedestrian. Paint samples matched material found at the scene. The defendant was located at her penthouse apartment at 2:15 a.m. Blood alcohol level measured 4 hours after the accident was 0.13. Extrapolating backward, at the time of the collision, she would have been at approximately 0.18, more than twice the legal limit. He presented each piece of evidence methodically. Photos of the damaged Mercedes, the toxicology report, Witness statements from 3 people who had been at the intersection and had seen the vehicle flee. Testimony from the parking garage attendant, who confirmed Victoria had returned at 11:42, seemed agitated and had quickly gone upstairs. Phone records showing that she'd called her father immediately, then her attorney, but never called emergency services. With each revelation, the case became more damning, but Victoria's expression remained largely unchanged. A slight annoyance, perhaps, as if this entire proceeding was an inconvenience rather than a reckoning. When Hernandez finally sat down, Judge Monroe looked toward the defense table. "Mr. Westbrook, your response." Gerald Westbrook stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. He approached the bench with the confidence of someone who had talked his way out of worse situations. "Your Honor, the prosecution has presented what appears to be compelling evidence, but appearances can be deceiving. Yes, my client was driving that evening. Yes, there was an accident. But the question of intent, of awareness, of culpability, these are far more complex than Mr. Hernandez would have this court believe." He moved smoothly around the courtroom, gesturing expressively. "My client had been at a charity function that evening, the Sterling Foundation Gala, raising money for children's hospitals. She had a glass of champagne, perhaps 2, over the course of 4 hours. Well within social norms, she was driving home, exhausted from a long day of philanthropic work. The lighting at that intersection has been cited in 17 previous accident reports. The pedestrian signal timing has been questioned by the city's own Traffic Safety Commission. David Chen, tragic as his death is, was looking at his phone, not fully attentive to his surroundings." Victoria nodded slightly, as if affirming these facts. "As for leaving the scene," Westbrook continued, "my client was in shock. The human mind, when traumatized, doesn't always react rationally. She panicked. She went home. She called her father for guidance, the natural instinct of a young woman in distress. These are not the actions of a callous criminal, Your Honor. These are the actions of someone who made a mistake, who was frightened, who deserves compassion and understanding, not vilification." He turned to face the gallery, playing to the room. "David Chen's death is a tragedy. No one disputes that. But ruining another young life won't bring him back. My client has already suffered enormously from this incident. The public scrutiny, the media attacks, the presumption of guilt before trial. She's been tried and convicted in the court of public opinion simply because of her family name, because people resent success, because our society loves to tear down those who have achieved." Judge Monroe's expression hadn't changed throughout the speech, but something in his stillness had intensified. When Westbrook returned to his seat, clearly satisfied with his performance, the judge let silence fill the courtroom again. He removed his glasses, cleaned them methodically with a cloth from his robe pocket, and replaced them. It was a small gesture, but it commanded absolute attention. "Ms. Ashford," Judge Monroe said quietly, "please approach the bench." Victoria glanced at Westbrook, who nodded. She walked forward, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Each step was measured, confident. She stopped at the appropriate distance, hands clasped in front of her, and met the judge's gaze with something that almost resembled a challenge. "Ms. Ashford, I want to ask you some questions directly. You understand you're under oath?" "Yes, Your Honor." Her tone was respectful, but held an edge of impatience, as if she was indulging a formality. "On the night of September 14th, you were driving your vehicle?" "Yes." "You struck David Chen at the intersection of Main and 5th? A pause. There was an impact." "Yes." "And you drove away without stopping to render aid or call for emergency assistance?" "I went home to call my father. I was confused and scared." Her delivery was smooth, clearly rehearsed. Judge Monroe leaned forward slightly. "Confused and scared. Tell me, Ms. Ashford, in the 6 months since that night, since David Chen died on a sidewalk while you drove home to your penthouse, how has this affected you?" Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. The question had caught her off guard. It's been very difficult, Your Honor. The stress, the accusations, Have you thought about David Chen?" "Of course. Tell me about him." What have you learned about the person whose life ended because of your choices that night? Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. Her perfectly practiced composure wavered. I'm sure he was a good person. His family must miss him. You're sure he was a good person? You don't know. Judge Monroe's voice remained level, but each word landed like a hammer. In 6 months, with all your resources, you never researched the man whose death you caused, never learned about his dreams, his family, his achievements. Your Honor, Westbrook interjected, standing. I don't see the relevance of... Sit down, Mr. Westbrook. I'm addressing your client directly. Judge Monroe never raised his voice, but the command was absolute. Westbrook sat. The judge returned his attention to Victoria. David Chen was 23 years old. He had just completed his master's degree in biomedical engineering at State University, graduated summa cum laude. He was beginning his PhD in the fall, researching affordable prosthetic technology for developing nations. He volunteered at a robotics program teaching disadvantaged children. He called his mother every Sunday. He had a girlfriend he was planning to propose to that Christmas. He played violin. He loved terrible science fiction movies. He was funny, kind, brilliant, and he had a future that stretched out before him with infinite possibility. Each fact landed in the silence like stones dropping into still water, ripples spreading through the courtroom. Victoria's face had gone pale. And you, Judge Monroe continued, drove home that night and never asked who he was. Because he wasn't real to you, was he, Ms. Ashford? He was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed by your father's money and your attorney's skills. Not a human being, not someone's son, someone's love, someone's hope for the future. Your Honor, Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Did you know his mother has had to take medical leave from her job because she can't function? That she sits in his empty apartment and holds his clothes because they still smell like him? That his girlfriend tried to take her own life 3 months ago because the grief was unbearable? Victoria's eyes were glistening now. But whether from genuine emotion or humiliation was unclear. Judge Monroe sat back. You understand the purpose of this court, Ms. Ashford. It exists because we, as a society, have agreed that there must be consequences for our actions, that we cannot simply do whatever we wish to others and walk away, that human life has value, every human life, not just those born into privilege and wealth. He let that hang in the air. Victoria stood frozen, no longer meeting his gaze. Her carefully constructed armor was cracking, fissures spreading through her composure. Your attorney spoke eloquently about your suffering, about the stress you've endured, about the unfair presumption of guilt. Tell me, Ms. Ashford, do you believe you're the victim in this situation? The question hung in the air like a noose. The courtroom was absolutely silent, every person present holding their breath. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted to Westbrook, to her father looking for rescue, and then, incredibly, inexplicably, she laughed. It was a short, nervous sound, almost a scoff, a reflex born from discomfort and a lifetime of never truly being held accountable. But in the sacred silence of that courtroom, in that moment, it was the worst possible thing she could have done. The sound died quickly, but the damage was done. Several people in the gallery gasped. Hernandez looked up sharply. Even Westbrook closed his eyes briefly, knowing his client had just destroyed whatever sympathy she might have garnered. Judge Monroe's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes turned to stone. He let the moment stretch out, let Victoria stand there with the echo of her inappropriate laughter still hanging in the air, let everyone in the courtroom absorb what had just happened. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, which somehow made it more devastating. You laugh, in a courtroom, while discussing a young man's death, while his mother sits 10 feet away from you, living every parent's nightmare. Victoria's face drained of all color. The reality of what she'd done, not the accident, but the laugh, the visible evidence of her callousness, seemed to finally penetrate. Your Honor, I didn't mean it was nervous. Bailiff, Judge Monroe said. Please escort Mrs. Chen from the courtroom if she wishes to leave. An older woman in the gallery, David's mother, 62 years old, face ravaged by grief but maintaining dignity, shook her head. "I'm staying." Her voice was firm, accented with her native Mandarin still present after 30 years in America. "I want to hear." Judge Monroe nodded with visible respect. He returned his attention to Victoria, who was now visibly shaking. The confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by the dawning horror of someone who had finally, catastrophically, miscalculated. "Ms. Ashford, your attorney painted a picture of a young woman who made a mistake, who panicked, who deserves compassion. But your actions, not just that night but today in this courtroom, tell a different story. They tell the story of someone who has never faced real consequences, who has been insulated by wealth and privilege from the reality of what accountability means. Someone who thinks that rules apply to other people. Someone who can laugh while discussing a life she ended." He opened a folder on his bench. "I've read the pre-sentencing report. I've reviewed your history. 3 speeding tickets in the past 2 years, all dismissed. A DUI charge when you were 21 that mysteriously vanished from your record. Multiple complaints from employees at your father's companies about harassment that were settled with non-disclosure agreements. A pattern of behavior that suggests you believe yourself above the law." Victoria was crying now, silent tears running down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. But Judge Monroe showed no signs of softening. "Your attorney asked for compassion and understanding. Let me tell you what compassion is, Ms. Ashford. Compassion is stopping when you hit someone, calling for help, holding their hand while they die if you can't save them. Compassion is taking responsibility immediately, expressing genuine remorse, doing everything in your power to make amends to the family you've devastated. Compassion is not hiring an army of lawyers to attack the victim's character, not trying to use your family's money to make charges disappear, not standing in this courtroom with barely concealed contempt for these proceedings." He closed the folder. "You pled not guilty despite overwhelming evidence because you believed your family's influence would protect you. You fought every step of this process because you couldn't imagine a world where you'd actually be held accountable. And when asked about your victim, you laughed. The courtroom felt like it might implode from the tension. No one moved. Barely anyone breathed. Judge Monroe's voice, when he continued, carried the weight of absolute judgment. "I've served on this bench for 27 years. I've seen humanity at its worst and occasionally at its best. I've sentenced people who committed terrible acts out of desperation, people who made mistakes they immediately regretted, people who showed genuine remorse and a commitment to do better. Those people, Ms. Ashford, deserve compassion. Those people deserve second chances." He paused, his gaze boring into her. "You are not one of those people." Victoria made a sound, half sob, half gasp, but couldn't form words. "The evidence is irrefutable. You were driving while intoxicated. You struck and killed David Chen. You fled the scene, prioritizing your own comfort and protection over his life. You used your family's resources to obstruct justice at every turn. And today, you demonstrated that even now, even after 6 months to reflect on what you've done, you lack the basic human capacity for remorse." Judge Monroe lifted his gavel, the movement deliberate and final. "I find you guilty on all charges. Vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated and leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. You will be remanded into custody immediately." The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Victoria's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the table for support, her mouth opening in shock. "Your Honor, please, I'm not finished." Judge Monroe's voice cut through her plea. "Sentencing will occur in 2 weeks, but let me be clear about what you're facing. The maximum sentence for these charges is 15 years. Your attorney will undoubtedly argue for leniency, for house arrest, for any alternative to actual incarceration. I want you to understand, Ms. Ashford, that I will not be moved by your family's name, their money, or their influence. David Chen's life had value. His death demands justice, and justice Finally, will be served. He looked toward the bailiff. Take her into custody. The courtroom erupted. Marcus Ashford stood, face red, moving toward the railing. This is outrageous! Your Honor, you can't... Mr. Ashford, sit down, or I will hold you in contempt. Judge Monroe's voice was like iron. Your daughter has been convicted of a crime she committed. That you believe this is unexpected or unfair speaks volumes about the world you've created for her, where consequences don't exist. That world ends today. The bailiff approached Victoria, who was now sobbing openly, mascara running down her face in black rivers. She looked back at her father with desperate, pleading eyes. He stood frozen, for perhaps the first time in his life encountering a situation his money and influence couldn't solve, a problem he couldn't make disappear. Westbrook was gathering papers frantically, already planning appeals. Your Honor, we will be filing immediate motions. File whatever you wish, Mr. Westbrook. This verdict stands on the evidence and the law, and no amount of legal maneuvering will change what happened in this courtroom today. Judge Monroe looked down at Victoria one last time. Ms. Ashford, I hope that during your time in custody, you'll take the opportunity to reflect on the value of human life, on the weight of responsibility, on what it means to be part of a society where we're all accountable for our actions. I hope you'll think about David Chen, really think about him, about who he was and what was stolen from the world when you took his life. And I hope you'll emerge from this experience as someone capable of genuine empathy and remorse. The bailiff had placed handcuffs on Victoria's wrists. The click of metal closing was loud in the courtroom. She looked down at the restraints as if she couldn't believe they were real, as if surely this was a nightmare she'd wake from at any moment. But this was reality, unavoidable and absolute. As she was led away, her expensive heels clicking on the floor, her Chanel suit creased and her perfect hair coming loose, she looked smaller somehow, diminished. The courtroom watched in absolute silence. David's mother sat with tears running down her face, but there was something like relief there too, the first glimmer of justice after 6 months of anguish. Judge Monroe watched Victoria disappear through the side door, then looked out at the courtroom. This court stands in recess. We'll reconvene for sentencing in 2 weeks. The gavel came down again, and slowly, the courtroom began to empty. People spoke in hushed tones, processing what they'd witnessed. Marcus Ashford remained standing, staring at the door his daughter had vanished through, perhaps finally understanding that there were limits to what his billions could protect her from. In the following days, the media coverage was extensive. The video of Victoria's inappropriate laugh, captured by court cameras, went viral. Public opinion, which had been somewhat divided before the trial, solidified completely. The Ashford family's attempts to spin the narrative fell flat. Victoria had condemned herself with her own actions, with her visible lack of remorse, with that single devastating moment of laughter that revealed who she truly was. 2 weeks later, the courtroom reconvened for sentencing. Victoria looked different. No designer suit now, just a prison jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. The artificial confidence was completely gone, replaced by visible fear and, perhaps, the beginning of actual understanding. Westbrook made his arguments. Youth, lack of prior convictions, potential for rehabilitation. He painted her as a victim of her upbringing, someone who'd never been taught real accountability. Hernandez presented victim impact statements. David's mother spoke, her voice breaking but her words clear, about the magnitude of her loss. His girlfriend read a letter about the future they'd planned and would never have. His professor spoke about the research that would never be completed, the lives that might have been improved by his innovations. Through it all, Victoria cried silently, and this time, the tears looked genuine. When Judge Monroe handed down the sentence, 12 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 8, gasps filled the courtroom. Westbrook immediately began announcing appeals. Marcus Ashford looked 10 years older than he had 2 weeks prior. But Victoria, handcuffed and standing before the bench, did something unexpected. She looked up at Judge Monroe and spoke, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. To David's family, to everyone, I'm sorry. Whether the remorse was real or performative, born from genuine understanding, or just from the reality of her situation, no one could say with certainty. But Judge Monroe nodded slightly, acknowledging the words without absolving them. Apologies matter, Ms. Ashford, but only when they're accompanied by changed behavior, by genuine accountability, by a commitment to do better. You'll have years to consider whether your remorse is real. I hope for your sake and for the sake of anyone who might cross your path in the future that it is. The gavel came down one final time. Victoria was led away. Justice, imperfect and insufficient to restore what was lost, but necessary nonetheless, had been served. And Judge Elias Monroe, having delivered another verdict in a career full of them, gathered his papers and prepared for the next case, the next instance of humanity's failings, and occasionally its redemptions. Because this was the work, holding the line between chaos and order, between privilege and equality, between arrogance and accountability. Someone had to do it, and he dedicated his life to making sure it was done right. The message was clear, echoing through that courtroom and beyond. No one, regardless of their name or their wealth or their influence, is above the law. Everyone is accountable. Every life has value. And when those truths are challenged, there must be someone willing to stand firm and say with absolute conviction, not here, not today, not ever. That's the essence of justice. Not perfect, not always satisfying, but necessary. A line drawn in the sand that cannot be crossed without consequence. A promise that in the end, what you've done matters more than who you are. Justice for all means justice for everyone, from the powerful to the powerless, from the privileged to the forgotten. It means that a young man walking home from a study session has the same right to justice as the daughter of a billionaire has to a fair trial. It means that we don't get to choose which lives matter based on bank accounts and social status. It means that courts exist to find truth, assign responsibility, and ensure that when harm is done, there is accountability. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in equal justice under law, show your support by hitting that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of justice served and arrogance humbled. And drop a comment below saying justice for all, or telling us where you're watching from. Let's build a community of people who believe that accountability matters, that every life has value, and that no one is above the law. Because stories like this, as painful as they are, remind us why these principles are worth fighting for. They show us what happens when we hold the line, when we refuse to let wealth and privilege trump justice and human decency. So leave that comment, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep standing together for a world where justice isn't just for some, it's truly for all.